Bola Agbibi, TVC News, Lagos.
Joining me on the show today is Adebo Ogundoyin, Speaker of the Oyo State House of Assembly. He's also Chairman Conference of Speakers of State Legislators. Is right here with me in the studio. Mr. Speaker, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Mr. Andifemi.
Good thing is that you didn't come with your gavel, so we look equal today. But the big story this week is this big surprise, the declaration of an emergency rule in Rivers State, followed by an approval by the National Assembly, and then the whole country has gone crazy, especially with the loud voices from the opposition saying this isn't the way to go. What is the position of the Conference of Speakers on this, especially with the suspension of members of the Rivers State House of Assembly?
Well, to be honest, the Conference of Speakers, we haven't really met to deliberate on this matter.
Okay.
But you said it's mostly from the opposition. But I would say, to be honest, it's been from Nigerians from everywhere, especially Nigerians that care about our democratic nature. My own personal view on this matter is simply that we all know that the state of emergency has been declared, and the National Assembly has ratified it, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives. Our appeal to the leadership, both in the state houses, in the states in general, and of course in the national as well. Leaders from all and sundry should come together to ensure that we protect our democratic nature, democratic values, and ensure that there is peace and tranquility within the states in order for these democratic institutions to return back, because we cannot discount the efforts of the people in order for them to select their own leadership. And we believe that as political animals, we all have a right to determine our own leaders. So I would just say from a personal point of view that everybody should put hands together to ensure that these democratic institutions return back, be it the executive and the legislative arm. The legislative arm is one that concerns me directly, as the Chairman Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures. It's worrisome that we have one state that doesn't have a legislature and we know that the legislature is the representative of the people, and of course is a beacon for democracy in that state. And
that's the challenge, because sometimes you began by saying the majority of the people kicked against it, but it's hard to tell if the people who represent the people unanimously voted to ratify the decision of Mr. President. It brings to bear the question of whether or not the lawmakers are in tune with the reality of the people they represent. And that's perhaps why you guys really haven't got to your flowers, because, Nigerians feel you are, detached from the reality of what they want.
Well, the good thing about, or the special thing about being a legislator is that the people of your constituency and the constituents, they've put all their hopes and aspirations into that one person. So that means that whatever decision that one person makes is a reflection of the aspirations and decisions of everyone. It's very important for us as legislators to always ensure that we understand and we feel the pain and we know the aspirations of our people in order for us to be proper legislators. It's sad, that sometimes there's a disconnect, but we are putting mechanisms in place, especially in the subnational, to ensure that the disconnect and the gap between the legislature and the constituents, we reduce that gap as much as possible. And these are what the international best practices also.
Personally, what do you think? Does the president have the right to suspend a governor and members of the House?
To be honest, I'm not an expert in this field. I'm not going to say something based on emotions. Because of the position I hold, I have to talk responsibly, and I would allow the experts to delve into this. But what I would say on this matter is to appeal to both the state actors and the federal actors to ensure that mechanisms are put in place in order for peace resolutions on this matter, so that we can go back to the democratically elected.
The issue of independence of state assemblies have come to the fore with the recent incident in Lagos, where the House had to reverse itself as a result of what many consider political interference. What do you think is the problem?
To be honest, what I think about the Lagos State House of Assembly, and it happens in other state houses of assembly, is that The legislature at this point in time, you know, you would say from 99 to date, you know, it's not, that was almost 26 years, you know, we're practicing uninterrupted. I believe that, you know, even a 26 years old human being, either a male or a female, should be old enough to make his own decisions on his own. What we advocate for is less interference from external source, be it political source, be it environmental, be it, you know, just, we need to have a sane environment where it's quiet for us to make informed decisions that would benefit not just ourselves, because we also have to remember that the reasons why we're in the positions that we are in now is to represent some people. So these people we represent have to be in the center of whatever decisions we make.
It sounds good, Mr. Speaker, when you say less intervention, but how do you achieve that? Because a big challenge has been the issue of being rubber stamps to the executive. We hardly see a lot of check and balances until the House falls out with the governor. So there seems to be a nexus between how you and your colleagues emerge politically, your loyalty to the executive, which many call a rubber stamp. And I'm wondering, realistically, how do you navigate your independence through these realities?
To be honest, it's very difficult. I'll be honest with you, Nifemi. It's something that we all know that is a persistent issue. In my own case, for example, now I'm lucky that we actually have a very responsible executive and a very responsible governor in Engineer Seyi Makinde, the governor of Oyo State. He's done so tremendously well in carrying, you know, all arms of government together. And the same thing I try to emulate also, to carry the judiciary and the executive along together. In order for you to prove that you're not rubber stamp doesn't mean that you must be at constant loggerheads or conflicts with the executive. The role of the different arms of government is such that they are to work together in order to bring dividend of democracy to the best of its abilities to the people. So with the idea of we must have conflicts before we prove that we are not rubber stamped, you know, that's a cake. But at the same time, it shouldn't be a situation whereby the legislative fold their arms while the executive, you know, take the people for a ride. So it's a double-edged sword if you think about it. You know, at the same time, you hope that you have a responsible judiciary and an executive, and you as a legislative are in the middle to ensure there's check and balance. But at the same time, in a situation whereby that doesn't happen, and then, you know, the terms and conditions in which most of us legislators come into you'd be, you know, could be as of an influence of the executive arm and of a bearing influence also of the executive arm, even in the dealings of the legislature. So the solution, the answer to your question, if I may, is that the best way that we can go about this in order for the independence of the legislature and to strengthen that institution is the financial autonomy for the legislature.
And then you will need the constitutional review process.
That has
which
been
again
done.
is okay. So what is the next step?
The next step is implementation of this provision within the institution. Now it's a constitutional matter. Section 121, subsection 3 already guarantees financial autonomy for state houses of assembly. So what we're looking to do now is how to actually implement it in a safe way. Because we also have to remember that in the implementation of the financial autonomy, what has to be in the center of our own decisions, of our will to have the financial autonomy, has to be people-centered. What's the point of having financial autonomy when it's for private, for personal aggrandizement? You have to think beyond personal interest to think about how financial autonomy can actually impact the general population of which we represent.
Indeed.
And that's important.
So you're fresh from a 2-day workshop focused on harmonizing standing orders for state legislatures. How is this harmonization really critical, especially in light of the recent issues we've had in Rivers and Lagos?
So what we're trying to do with the harmonization of the standing orders is that in the Southwest, for example, now we have an harmonized standing order. So what we're trying to do also is that we want to make it a federal situation whereby all state houses of assembly have an harmonized standing order. This will bring about an orderly conduct of the plenary. It will bring about proper ways to select the leadership of the House, be it the presiding officer or the principal officers. And even in the recent case of the Lagos State House of Assembly, even in the removal of the speaker, you know, it has to be properly spelled out, you know, whereby the concept of fair hearing has to be addressed. You know, every citizen of Nigeria has the the right of a fair hearing. But in the situation whereby some members just gang up because of one reason or the other, whether it is
most of the members actually.
No, I'm not using Lagos as a case study. I'm just talking generally. What happens, what goes is that, there are situations whereby even some speakers haven't, even done anything wrong. And even if they've done something wrong, there should be a situation whereby, there should be fair hearing. Okay, misappropriation of funds, and all these things should be spelled out and then should be presented, just the same way that the procedure for removal of governors, whereby you have to first engage as to show you.
Hold that thought for a minute. Yeah. We're due for a break, and we're back with more with the Honorable Speaker of the Oyo State House of Assembly. Stay with us, everyone. Thanks for staying. One Right Honorable Adebo Ogundoyi is here. He's Speaker of the Oyo State House of Assembly and Chairman Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures. Thank you for staying the course in the program. Thank you. All right. So sometimes I wonder whether the problem is with the House rules or the implementation of it. Because look at what happened recently at the National Assembly. I spoke with some expert yesterday who mentioned that the House rule requires that there's actual voting. And that the voting procedure is published in at least 2 national dailies. What we saw was a voice vote. So now you want standing orders. But Nigerians are saying, even at the National Assembly where these orders exist, we don't really see them implemented.
I would say that the president, right, has a lot of work to do. Uneasy is the head that wears the crown, is the #1 custodian of our democratic principles and our democratic beliefs. In a situation whereby whether the national or the state houses of assembly or even the judiciary, we believe that the leader of all of the democratic practices or the political class has to step in to ensure that we protect these institutions. So it is really a national issue, us we're subnational. I can air my own personal opinion on this. And it's also down to the people, of concerns to also take this case up. But generally, I would say that as I'm sure the Speaker knows exactly what he's doing. I'm sure the Senate President also knows what he's doing. And, even though they still have protective and advisories in the clerks of the houses of of National Assembly. I'm sure they advise, and if they erred, maybe they have to check within themselves, and if they are correct, then it's been done.
But some critics argue that if you harmonize the standing orders, it might stifle the unique needs of individual states. How do you respond to that?
The thing about this harmonized standing order is that there's room for some alterations and amendments, Like in the Southwest, for example, we make sure that on Wednesdays, we use our dialects. We speak Yoruba. We call it the Yoruba Pombele sessions. And in other states as well.
It's a regional thing.
Yeah, right? It's a regional thing. But other regions also have also bought into the idea as well. So, there are some things that we pick. There are some things that, we do. But most importantly is to ensure that we have international best practices and even local best practices and national best practices spread amongst all the 36 state houses of assembly. And that is the goal. Because you see what happens is that there's disparity in terms of the debate that some plenaries have. You have to have the standing order to guide so that you can have a and meaningful debates within the House of Assembly in order for you to get a consensus out of that. Some state houses of assembly do it in a different ways, and while some others do it in a good way. So when we compare notes, and then we all decide by ourselves that, okay, this is the best ways, with some other development partners that have also helped us to determine, the best ways to get the consensus out of, debate, and then we'll move forward, with whatever we decide to do.
The issue of special seats for women in legislative houses. How many women do you have in the Oyo Assembly?
I'm happy to announce that it's 100% increment from the last assembly. The last assembly we had one, and then now we have two. So I mean, if you keep on increasing by 100%, I guess before you know it, we'll have our women in the house.
That is still out of how many seats?
Out of 32, actually.
Oh my!
So I mean,
I'm wondering what percentage is that? Mathematicians in the house.
I don't know if the percentages for that, but the truth is that we actually support this.
Yeah. What's your position on the special seats for women?
Okay, on the National Assembly, from the last engagement we have with the National Assembly, what they're proposing is that there should be one seat at the Federal House of Representatives per state, meaning that aside from the already allocated seats that are being contested for, there'll be an extra seat whereby each political party fields a woman for that special seat. So we will support this. We've had the deliberation even just earlier today on this topic, and the Conference of Speakers are ready to back this up as long as the National Assembly will transmit to us, because, you know, the process of the constitutional alteration we have to receive these documents from the National Assembly before we act on it on the basis of 2/3 approval to the bill. The only downsides to this that I foresee that might happen, and we have to guard against this, is that we already have a tough time bringing women into the normal allocated seats in the House of for House of Assembly or Senate or House of Assembly. I don't want a situation whereby you know, the feelings in the states will be like, well, you already have your special seat,
and then you are limited to that,
and then they just push all women to contest for that special seat. That is not the point.
I've heard people also say that special seats for women might seem as tokenism, and the fact that it might not really address the problem, that perhaps we should identify what the root causes are. Why aren't women winning primary elections, for instance? Are women getting as much education as men? What is limiting their chances? They're saying that the special seat is on the surface, that we really need to identify what the root causes are and give women equal chances.
Well, see, this topic is really broad, and the question you have is multidimensional, but I'll start with the downsides to it. You spoke about tokenism. Well, some people might think about that, but at least I would argue that it's better for us to start something than not. You know, because by the time you have 36 women in the Federal House of Representatives, I believe there are about probably 16 women now. So that's almost more than double the amount. At least if we have that, maybe people will have more confidence in women in political space. Another issue that I believe that it hinders the participation of women also, we also have to remember that politics is very capital intensive. You know, the same way men get bullied, women get bullied in that field. If you ask the women that have emerged, you know, in these positions, they will tell you that politics is very capital intensive. And you have to understand that in our own economic environment, you know, men hold most of the resources. And even on the other aspects, what we can work on is how, you know, men or women can come together to support each other, you know, the same way men do it. So, and even men to support women who have the capacity and have the interest. Because, you know, the thing about the interest is that you can force a horse to the river, but you can't force the horse to drink the water.
We have to go now, but let's talk about you. You have been Speaker twice now.
Yes,
at the Oyo State House of Assembly. You became Speaker in your first time in the House?
My second time. I came in through a by-election in 2018.
Okay, yeah, when the Speaker died.
So this is my third time, yes, then the previous Speaker.
And you're perhaps the youngest Speaker in Nigeria.
Well, I was the youngest when I came in.
Oh, you were, where you came in?
But
you're growing old
young
now.
shall grow.
But by the way, you still hold the position of the youngest Speaker, chairman of Conference
of
Speakers of State Legislature. Yes, so what's next? Are you going to run for governor of your state?
Well, that is not even on my horizon, to be honest.
And that's what they say, right?
I haven't heard
age is on your side.
Well, it's not, because the thing about, you know, politics is that a lot of people get lost in looking ahead, you know, and they forget about their present assignments, which is what they should be focused on, you know, and then that also deprives the people that you represent quality representation, because you're not focused on them anymore, and you're focused so much on the future. So I leave the future to God, but what I have power over is my actions of today, and my actions of today is focused on my people that I represent.
Two-time Speaker, and you're not even 40 yet. I'm glad that you're speaking to the media. Hopefully we're going to have this exclusive again.
Whenever you come in.
Because we have some speakers who don't speak.
Well, so a speaker must speak.
Must speak. Adebo Oguntoye, Speaker, Oyo State House of Assembly, Chairman, Conference of Speakers of State Legislators. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Nifemi. That was a pleasure.
That's our show today, everyone. You can watch it again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. The conversation continues on X. Remember to use the hashtag Beyond 100 Days and tag at Nifemi Oguntoye.